said, I've been a teacher for, gosh, I taught for 12 years. So, and public speaking is something I do quite a lot, with board meetings, city council meetings, even poetry readings. I'm a poet also. But today I was like, I struggled to even write an outline, even though my students would laugh and say, you always do an outline first. But as I was saying, I had a faith that it would come to me what I need to say, because it always does. And I appreciate this space, this, like you said, safe space, because even my own neighborhood, my home doesn't feel, I don't know where a safe space is anymore. So this one is really safe to me. So got a little bit about my background. Growing up, people would look at me and not really know what my background was. And I've been, everything from Dominican to people speak Spanish to me, and I said I should learn how to speak Spanish because I look like I'm a Latina. But my background is that my parents were, my father passed away 8 years ago. I'll talk about him in a moment. But he was African American, so I do consider myself a Black woman. And also my mother is Jewish, and she's of Russian English descent. So whenever people would ask me, I really didn't get asked what it was like to grow up mixed until I got to college, because college they like to really have you connect and dig deep and all of this. And I was in this class, and I'll never forget the essay. I still remember the name of the essay. You're talking in 1997. It was Gloria Anteldua, and it was called The Borderlands. And you would think on the surface this is this is made for me. But I remember sitting in that class, and I never had a hard time speaking my mind. Everyone will tell you that knows me. I said, I never felt like I was in the borderlands. And the professor's like, I find that hard to believe. 2 different religions, 2 different races. I said, I don't. I said, it wasn't as if I walk home, get home from school and say, hi, Black father. Hi, white mother. That's my mom and my dad. I didn't feel in between anything until I went out in the world and people started to make me aware of that. That was just my family. I didn't think it was weird that my mom was the only white person really at the family reunion. That was my mom. She didn't stick out to me. She looked just like family, just like everybody does. So anyway, I grew up in Long Island, New York. And interestingly too, Long Island's credit, I really didn't feel out of place growing up. Every once in a while a friend would say, oh, they meet my parents and go, oh, that's what you are. And I'd be like, what did you think I was? It was just kind of funny. And I, still have stayed in touch even though I moved away with a lot of my friends from high school, because, they never saw anything different about me. They saw things that were different. It didn't have to do with my skin color. So I went to college at Rutgers where my brother played football and studied English. And then I was on a fast track. I was like, I'm going to go to Harvard. That's where I thought I wanted to go. And I saw a poster that talked about the education differences for Black kids. And I saw the poster and I thought, I don't want to go to an Ivy League college, which I thought, that's the quintessential success. I said, I even said to my professor, Bruce Robbins, who I'm still friends with to this day, 20 years later. He's a professor at Columbia right now. But I said, how do you live with yourself sitting in academia, thinking about social justice problems, and not actually getting out there? And he said, well, gee, when you make it, put it like that, it doesn't sound like I'm doing very much. And we're still friends, so that's a good thing. But so all throughout college, I had the same boyfriend. He's my husband today, and it was difficult. I don't know if my in-laws are tuning in or not, but the truth is they were not very welcoming to the idea that their son, who went to Christian Brothers Academy, goes to college, it's an all-boys school, for those who don't know, goes to college, meets his first girlfriend, and she looks like me. But imagine a young, rebellious me with bright red hair and lots of opinions, and they were shocked, and some of the things they said are very hurtful. And I carried them, with me for years, and that's something that's important for people to understand, that when you hurt somebody with your words, you may forget those words and move on, but people carry those with them, And in honor of, my respect for my family, I'm not going to air grievances with the family on my Facebook. But the one comment I do want to say was that my in-laws said, not directly to me, but they said, if you marry Paige, where are you going to live? I remember calling my mom and saying, can you believe they said this to me? And she was like, well, where do they think we live? You know, we live in a house, you can live anywhere, you know, like this is America. And for years, I've carried that statement with me. I was angry. And it's really not until what's going on right now, until I was actually sitting right there listening, that I realized that all they were saying was that they were concerned about their son. They were concerned about the racism that they know is in the world. Yes, do they have some in themselves too? Absolutely. But you think about that. Where are you going to live? You know, when people ask me, where do you live? And I say Linwood, they roll their eyes. They say, oh gosh, how's that supposed to be? And I actually feel like that's dangerous as well. Because when we typecast a community as a racist community, that's not fair either. That's also prejudice. Because there's plenty of people that live in Linwood that don't, you know, that are not racist. There are plenty of non-white people in Linwood. There are plenty of people that are open-minded and get shut down because we put the label on them and they feel afraid to speak. So I think, you know, just examining your speech and how you talk and realizing that, you know, where are you going to live? So I feel like that now. Like, what could I do? I could react and say, well, people in Linwood are racist. So now what? Where do I go? I'm leaving. I'm going to pack my bags and go where? Where exactly do I go? Do I go to an all-white community? Do I move into an all-black community with my white husband? You know, where do I go? And the point I'm making is that every community needs to be welcoming to everyone. And when someone gets hurt or is not treated fairly, we can't just shelter our children and our loved ones and say, come over here where you don't have to experience that. Because waves of injustice, Martin Luther King said this, a lot of people have been bringing up Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and he was nonviolent. But if you read more than just the quotes, he had a lot to say, a lot more to say than just everybody be peaceful. You know, he said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So you can't build a wall around a country, around a community, and around the White House and keep this out because it affects everyone. It's like in the wind, you know, like we were saying, it's in the air that we breathe. So growing up, I mean, I could give you a laundry list of examples of racism that I experienced. But I was mostly unaware. A lot of it came from my father's stories. My father grew up in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. He's the youngest of 9 children, well, actually 10. He had a twin brother that died very, very young. And, you know, it was the ghetto. You know, it was very poor. It's still a very struggling city. And my father always taught me, his father, my grandfather, was a police officer. And one of the best stories about my grandfather was that they found a brothel one day. And, you know, they were doing a big bust and they found a mattress full of money. And my grandfather was famous for making them give the money back. And they were like, no, you have 9 kids. What are you doing? Like, just take some, put it in your pocket and go. So I have like a long history of people standing up and showing me the right way. My father also said, you know, in the community, he used to tell us that everybody got to run wild as late as they wanted. But the Washington kids, when the streetlights went on, they had to sit on the stoop. And they hated it. Why do we have to sit here? And he used to tell me, you know, all those kids that were running around the street, guess where they are today? So, you know, these stories all throughout my life. Then my father got a football scholarship. And he played at Tennessee State. My uncle was a professional football player. So when people talk about the NFL and their apologies, my uncle, Clyde Washington, he played, and he told my father, when you go, don't go to, he was in Ohio, and he said, don't go there, go somewhere else. There's a lot of racism here. So my dad went to Tennessee State. Like, I don't know, it's crazy. He actually also dated Wilbur Rudolph, a little bit. So my father would tell me stories, and I was always interested in civil rights movement. And I asked him, I said, Dad, you were there. You know, did you do this dance? Like, did you experience this? Like, and I pictured my father, who was like, you know, he was a physical education teacher as well for 40 years and a coach and had a bold voice. I said, you know, you were probably leading the protests. And he was like, no. And I said, why? And he said, because well, I was a fiery young man. Like, I'm not going to sit at a lunch counter and have somebody put a cigarette out on me and you're going to tell me not to turn around and punch them in the face. And I said, that's a good point. But in college, when I studied civil rights movement, I learned that those people who sat there went through vigorous training. And I felt good about coming to my father and teaching him that. He didn't know that. He thought they just had some sort of extra, what's the word for it, grit. But that wasn't true. And even in my classes, all throughout, whether I taught third grade, whether I taught fifth or sixth grade, whether I taught in Brooklyn, Baltimore, Newark, Monmouth County, I taught in Ocean Township. All of the subject areas, no matter where I taught civil rights. And I used to ask my father, why don't you come and talk to the class? And he never wanted to, because I think he had to live with that guilt and that shame that he wasn't one of those people. So then when I did teach for America and I started teaching in Baltimore City, my dad was like, why do you want to go to a bad neighborhood? Like, I grew up in a place with crime, and now here I work so hard for privilege, essentially. And now you want to go back to a place you don't have to go. And I didn't really have an answer for him. But I never left. I mean, it's been 20 years, and those are the communities that I feel most connected to, even though I grew up in Long Island. So moving ahead to where I want to get with this was that, the relationship within my home, having children, I have 4 kids that are a quarter black. So one of them has blonde hair and blue eyes, so he doesn't look black. So I feel like I'm in a very unique position here because on one side, I'm a black woman. On the other side, I have the privilege of a white woman. I look at my children and I have 3 boys. I don't have to worry that a police officer is going to look through the window and see a black man and treat him a certain way, like black men have been treated in this country. I don't have to have that worry. My worry is that my children will not understand, and they will come out of a school district and not learn their own history simply because they don't look a certain way. When my children were at school just this year, I think it was this year or last year, students were chanting "build a wall" at lunch, and they came home and were like, Mom, is this really how kids feel? So I've had to have some very deep conversations with my children. Since my father passed away and I don't live close to home, my kids, I live in Linwood, they never had a black teacher. They've never had a black coach. They've never had, their experience with black people is when I bring them to Atlantic City, to the soup kitchen, to the community. And I don't want my children to grow up thinking those are the only black people there are poor people. So I've had to explain to my kids, why do certain neighborhoods, why does Pleasantville look this way? We're starting a farmer's market in Pleasantville, and we have one in Atlantic City. So I have to navigate these avenues with my children, and also at home with my in-laws. So one of the things that has connected me to my in-laws, despite a lot of disagreement, has been my father-in-law gardens. So a lot of people don't know this about crops, but my husband got into gardening as well. So my father-in-law would bring over all these plants. We had a huge garden, practically a farm. And my husband's a physician, so he works a lot. So here I am, and I'm like, I love vegetables. I don't want them to die. So I would have to call him on the phone, what do I do? This thing's eating this. And so the garden brought us together, even though I could very easily come up here and say, I've got racism, and see him as a racist. But I don't call that racist. And that's part of why we've been able to coexist for so long. We can teach and we can learn and we can also love, even if we don't agree with everything the way they behave. So the gardens to me is a little bit of that as well. That's why when I founded an organization, I didn't want it to be a Linwood organization. And it's not an Atlantic City organization. A lot of times that's how things are. And I believe Sister Jean's is that perfect marriage as well. Frequency community, Atlantic City community, you've got the Catholic Church, you've got the Presbyterian Church, all of these bridging the gaps. And I believe that's where there's change. So my grandfather, my Jewish grandfather, right before he went to the hospital, which he had fallen on the steps at my parents' house. And he's sitting on the couch and he goes, Paige, I gotta tell you something. And he said, I love all of my grandchildren, but I think you kids are special. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, when your mother told me that she was in love with a black man, I said, well, what if he leaves you? That was my first inkling, black fathers, that he gets you pregnant, like white girl pregnant, disappear. And he said to me, I feel so guilty that I ever even had that thought, because your father has been such a wonderful husband and such a wonderful father. And he said, but I think that you kids are the wave of the future because you're the in-between, you're the bridge. And then he said, go get your mother and needs to call an ambulance. You know my family, that's like pretty cyclical. So anyway, moving forward, I moved to South Jersey in 2015. I founded Crops just a short year later, 2016. We started the Linwood Farmers Market. Our community gardens grew. We have one at the Covenant House, one at Venice Park Association. We work with them. And then we have the one at Sister Jean's Kitchen. And just recently, I was driving past the Hamilton Community Garden, and I noticed it was covered in weeds, where usually it's beautiful. So I called Cookie Tail, and she's usually in the know about these things. And I said, well, what's going on? And she investigated, and it turned out that the woman who was taking care of it had passed away from COVID. So I don't know, I didn't know her, but I know that, God forbid, if I were to pass away, I would not want the gardens to go to weeds. So it's 29 raised beds, and we've been over there working there as well. So that's a real special project because I'll be out there and tired and exhausted trying to get together and going, all right, this is for you. You know? And it's this camaraderie between people who understand the important work that community gardens are. So I want to use the last few minutes to tell a story that I've already told in writing, and I've also told it on Facebook with my own personal Facebook Live page. And it has to do with the protest last Saturday. And, you know, I always considered myself a political activist. It's just what I list. I'm like, mom, profit organizing teacher, social activist. So it would make sense, you know, that I would be at a protest. But for me, I didn't like gather a bunch of friends. I didn't even know I was really going to go to it until someone sent me the flyer. It was just a picture. I didn't know what organization was organizing it. I just knew in my heart I had to go when I wanted to go. So I got the gardens together, and I ran home, and I was quick painting a sign, and I did like 5 or 6 signs because it's not hard to people think. You know? And I was like blowing on it to hope it would dry before, you know, I got over there. And the interesting thing about it is on the back of the sign, unbeknownst to me, my daughter was a painting, and my daughter had done a rainbow, which I saw during the protest, and as I held it up, and I was like, oh, so sweet. So anyway, I got in my car and I drove to Atlantic City, and I was uneasy. I didn't know who was organizing it. I wasn't with anybody. Yes, I spent a lot of time in Atlantic City, but I don't know everybody. I'd heard rumors that perhaps there would be violence, and I just knew I had to go. So I pulled up and I was very nervous. I got out of the car. I was nervous also because of COVID. My family's from New York. My brother, you know, had it. So I was nervous. I've been locked, strict lockdown. I've been in a supermarket. I have 4 kids in 3 months. So this was big for me to go. So I got there, and I got out of the car, and there's already a lot of people there, so I was a little bit big. And I was shaking, because I didn't know. There was a lot of police, but things looked okay. So I was standing, and what do I do when I'm nervous? All the time I go and I talk to people. So I started just talking like, hi, how are you? This and that. So the protest gets started, and the leader has a bullhorn, and he says, he's like, all right, and starts waving people into Atlantic Avenue. We're in front of the public safety building. My heart started to race. I'm like, are we allowed to be in the middle of the street? Like, the police didn't say you can go in the middle of the street. So we go in the middle of the street, and the police start blocking traffic for us. So I was like, okay, this is going. Actually, before this point, I walked up to a police officer and started a conversation with him, just kind of gauge the situation, my safety. And he smiles, and we started talking, and I said, well, can we take a picture together? And I took a picture together with him. And it turned out, I told him I had a friend in Staten Island who is a police officer, and they had worked in the same precinct. So you talk about, like, God, putting that together. So we're in the middle of the street, and I'm like, this man rides through on a bicycle through the protesters, and he's shouting, nothing really egregious, but he's really angry. So my heart started to race, and I'm like, I was really unsure. So then the leader says, all right, everybody lay down on the ground. And I hadn't seen any of the protests on TV, so I didn't know why I was laying on the ground. And let me tell you, every instinct in my body was like, don't lay down on the they're in the middle of the road. There could be someone starting violence. And I looked next to me, and the person next to me laid down, so I couldn't ask them. They were already on the ground, and I was like, I guess, and then there's a part of you that just does what you're told. So I laid down on the street, and I was wearing black, and the heat was rising up from the ground and onto my back. And I didn't know why I was laying there. And I was just praying, I was like, I hope everything's okay. I hope I'm not going to die. And all of a sudden, somebody yells out, I can't breathe. And then the crowd started yelling over and over again, just with such pain and passion. And I started to cry. And I was laying there on the ground, and I could feel like what it would be like to be George Floyd. A little bit, just a little bit. And that's really all it takes to have compassion, is just to feel somebody else's place a little bit. So they started, I'm chanting too. I started screaming. I had my mask on, and I said, I can't breathe. And it felt very cathartic because I felt like I had to hold so much in. And then there's a pause, and everything gets quiet. And someone yells, Mama! And I just lost it. I mean, just tears. The whole mask was soaked. My face was soaked. And people were just crying out over and over again, Mama, Mama. And, we were talking about what brings us together, not what divides us. And to me, there's nothing that could bring us together more than a cry for Mama. I heard my children. I heard George Floyd calling out everybody. Nobody would want to see their child in that position. I'm not a looter. I'm not a rioter. I'm a mother. And I'm a Black woman. And I'm a white woman. And I'm from New York. And I live in South Jersey. All of those things don't matter. All the story I told you before that moment shouldn't matter. The only way that we can get better is if we start to see that humanity together. I marched for 3 hours, and I heard 2 people yell something negative about the cops. 2. And in both instances, it was a Black woman who was walking a little bit ahead of me. Both times. First was a man. She said, we're not going to do that today. I went, okay. And then the second time, this woman was very angry. She was yelling over and over again, trying to turn the tide of the emotion. And this woman said again, she said, sis, I understand your pain, but we're not here for that. We're not going to do that today, sis. And she held her hand, and they walked together. So when I saw on the Real Bring and Scene page, my picture, so if anybody has seen the pic, it was a post that had the arrests in Atlantic City. And I listed the 17 people that were arrested. There were hundreds of people. And I flipped through the pictures, and it had people looting, people destroying property. And then there was a picture at the very end, before the second to last picture, it was a march. And I happened to be in the very front of the picture. I don't know why my hand is on my hip. I have to go back to see. But you can see my hand-painted sign. And then I was like, why am I on this post of people arrested? I mean, my face is one of few that are in focus. And I flipped to the next page, the next picture, and it was the Atlantic City Police Department emblem with handcuffs on it. And beneath that picture, there were 322 comments that I read through. And it just broke my heart. Because how can we equate people wanting justice, people with compassion and love in their hearts? How can we equate that and say that just because the actions of some, therefore that negates all of the protesters that day in Atlantic City? That post was propaganda. And propaganda, we know where propaganda goes. So let's roll it back. What would we say to our children if they were spreading something like that? What would we say? Because my son wanted to go to the protest in Ocean City the next day, my 12-year-old. He wanted to come with me, and I took him with me. And I asked my husband first. I said, is it okay? And he said, no, absolutely, take him. And when we got to Summers Point, and we were walking around the corner down Shore Road, I saw people who were not police officers, and they were not security guards holding guns. And I had to walk past people with guns. I had no right to be standing out on that street. I don't care if that's their business. I don't care if they're afraid, because you know what? I was afraid too. I had to walk past them there were people on the roofs with guns above me. And I was terrified. And none of that was on social media. So propaganda works both ways. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to be in this together. Because when I walked past the Circle Liquor and the marina, there were 2 Hummers, there were tons of police officers, at least 25, 30 police officers with guns. And then up on the hill there, I felt like I was under siege. And I was just here to say, you know what, people don't need to be hurt anymore. And I was afraid. And that's what I want people to understand, is that, like, I was at both protests. I haven't looted, I haven't stolen anything I can think of in my whole life. You know, maybe when I was a kid, I don't know. But, you know, it's dangerous. What's going on Facebook is dangerous and it's harmful. And I haven't really slept in over a week. And people keep saying, why don't you get some rest? Because I can't stop. I feel like I can't let propaganda keep being put out there without saying something. I want to put a comment on every post. So, to end, I just wanted to reiterate what Reverend was saying about this. And it was, think of what we have in common, not what divides us. You know, if you can go back to that moment, imagine calling out. This man's calling out for his mother. People see in the video. Everybody just wants to live. They want a right to live. They want peace. Whether they're angry and destroying things right now, that's a thing. We have to look at the cause and effect. How do you feel? Just think of what brings us together. Thank you.
Paige, thank you so much. It's not fair for us to put the onus on our friends, brothers and sisters who happen to be African American or different color than we are, from a different background. That's not why we did this. We did this to give